New Aphotic Realm announcement. Submission windows for upcoming issues. Issue 10, the theme is justice. That's hard-boiled fiction with a supernatural twist. The deadline for that will be April 1st, 2020. Issue 11, the theme is kaiju, giant monsters terrorizing civilization. Deadline will be October 1st, 2020 for those stories. Issue 12, the theme is lycanthropy, which is, of course, self-explanatory. It can be any type of animorph with a bloody twist. So I guess that's werewolves and Jesus, giant, I don't know. What do people turn into? Seals? I've just got a little seal on my desk, so I thought of that. I don't know. You'll have to be more imaginative than I just was. But the deadline for lycanthropy, January 1st, 2021. Good luck to everyone submitting.
This thing, I hope you like it. Let's talk about it, yeah. Let's lose track. Losing the plot podcast. Losing the plot podcast. Losing the plot podcast. Talking to Leo X.
My guest this episode is Alexander Pyles. His first debut release is MILO. It's out with Radix Media. It's like a short story chapbook thing. It's really cool. It's got lovely art. It's a great story. I hope you will check it out. So we talk about that and about writing in general and life and so on, as we always do. If you are a reader, writer, or somebody who wants to be on the show, or if you want to tell me something about the show, you can always do so using losingtheplotpodcast-at-gmail-dot-com, and I look forward to hearing from you. But that's all my intro chat, so here is my conversation with Alexander Pyles. Where in the world are you?
I'm in just I would say northwest of Chicago, Illinois, in the U.S. So, yeah, just out among the cornfields over here.
So is that where you're from?
No, I'm originally from actually the East Coast, from more of a tourist area called Virginia Beach, in Virginia, obviously. So, yeah, I desperately miss the ocean. But my wife's family is from out here, so that's where we are right now, at least.
Cool. So, how long have you been there for?
Going on, I think 4 years. So
4 years.
Yeah.
Is it near where you did your MFA, or was that somewhere else?
No, that was elsewhere. I did my MFA at Seton Hill in Greensburg, PA, which is just on the other side of Pittsburgh. But I was actually in Ohio, so which was just over the line. So it's but yeah, because I was working in Cleveland at the time while doing my MFA. So
you chose it because of where you were working?
It was sort of a 2-for-1. I had a friend from undergrad who basically talked me into it because I was in grad school at the moment, and he was wrapping up his senior year of college, and I was kind of spinning my wheels. I was getting my MA in philosophy at the time, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to go into academia. And then it's always a question of well, what do you do with an MA in philosophy aside from go to law school, which I wasn't interested in. And he was like, well, how about you just take that and write genre, because the program at Seton Hill is a writing popular fiction MFA, which I think at the time was maybe I think it was 2 or 3 in the whole country as far as specifically writing genre fiction. And I was like, all right. And it was like it's a low residency program. So like I'm only there, or we were only there for like 5 days twice a year.
Mhm.
Um, and then everything else was remote, which worked out great for someone who didn't really want to be in school any longer. Um, so yeah, and it just so happened that it just worked out geographically that Seton Hill was like within, 3 hours of where I
Mhm.
was, and um, yeah, so in some ways it was like partly nearby and partly what I was interested in. So
Mhm. And is science fiction your thing, or just popular fiction in general? What did you want to write? What do you write?
yeah, um, so it's kind of expanded now, but then it was mostly science fiction because it was the genre that I was primarily working in, and from like the philosophical standpoint that I was at, it was like how the best way it seemed was like the best way to incorporate both was
Mhm.
doing science fiction.
Yeah.
My the the two science fiction writers that, because I was kind of a late bloomer coming into science fiction anyway. It wasn't until really like late high school, college that I really got into it. But I read a lot of so Dune, which I guess is kind of like definitely in vogue right now,
Mhm.
and actually Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower was, and both of those two books, which have like very opposite ends of the spectrum. I feel like it was the like, kind of the sort of like social and like philosophical underpinnings that like really brought me into science fiction and made me like
Mhm.
really enjoy the genre. So yeah, so my thesis for the MFA program was basically like science fiction, like space opera ish novel, um, and but since then I've kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of like been flirting with all the different genres at this point. I'm still operating very much in science fiction, but I have been experimenting a little bit with like some like a little bit of fantasy, like maybe like borderline like magical realism or something like that.
Mhm.
All the way up to like horror and like weird fiction too. So kind of, I don't know, many genres. I can't really pick one at the moment, at least.
Yeah.
So
Figuring it out, speculative in general.
yeah,
Think. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
it's good to explore. It's good to try stuff out. Like you, I think I discovered science fiction really late, and then by the time I was reading it, like especially if you read contemporary sci-fi, it's almost written
hmm
for people who have been reading it for decades. So you pick up a
yeah,
book, and I'm like, what the hell is this? What are they even
yeah,
talking about? Um,
yeah,
I've never felt so blocked out of a genre as science fiction. I think it feels like
yeah.
it can be at times the least accessible.
Yeah, and there are some like I think that there. I mean, it's a great time to be reading science fiction too. Like even though like yeah, definitely have come across those issues too, especially in the beginning. But now that I've like gone back and kind of like done my homework and read like I've gone back and read Asimov and a little bit of Heinlein. Like the problem with me is that like I don't always enjoy classics. Like the only probably like classic writer I really enjoy. Um, I think all the way around would be like Legume, but um, but yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that point. But I don't know, there are some good writers I think that do have like some I don't know, like introductory, like almost, or it doesn't. I don't know. I don't want to degrade them either by saying that they're introductory, but they don't like. There isn't this high bar of like knowledge that you need to know of this genre. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Is it like trying to think of what like Gareth Powell, I think, writes like some great like space opera that like you don't need. Like I wouldn't recommend like Adrian Tarkovsky's like Children of Time to
Mhm.
a newbie, but
Right.
um, but I don't know. Uh, I don't know. There's a plethora out there for sure.
Yeah. No, it's always good to know because I think that I love science fiction. I think for the same reasons you do. It has the most
Yeah.
interesting philosophical questions, like um, the types of abstractions that you can make in science fiction to reflect what it means to be human. I love that. I love that so much, and like especially when you're speculating about like the directions that technology might go. Like that's the one thing that science fiction can do that other genres don't. I love that, and that's why I'm sad when people find it inaccessible, because I do too. Like I'm much.
Yeah.
I've got a ton of science fiction books, and sometimes I'm afraid of opening them in case they're one of those. Just that you got like a dictionary, Wikipedia, Google. Like, what the hell is this? But your first release is MILO. Tell listeners what it's about.
Yeah. So MILO is I don't know. I feel like it's kind of almost a simple story to some degree, but it's so we follow MILO, who has a like degenerative disease, which will eventually like take his life, but it isn't until he has a best friend who brings to him a possible solution of not only like curing him of his degenerative disease, but also like giving him like kind of a new lease on life, which just so happens to be like a new robot body. But it turns out that the solution here might not actually be a good solution for MILO. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But I think with I don't know. I feel like I'm borrowing like I borrow a lot of tropes clearly in MILO too. So there's just a lot going on there. But yeah, no.
Yeah, for sure. Like, was it inspired by your philosophy background?
A little bit. Just because if I subscribe to any school in philosophy, which I try really hard not to, I do like subscribe to like kind of the existentialist kind of like who am I as an individual and who are people in this broader sense. And so I would say that that's probably maybe like one thread that inspired MILO. Probably the bigger thread for me was like my mom had MS growing up until it was complications with MS. She like passed away in 2016. And she was kind of the larger inspiration for all of that, channeled a lot of like what I saw of her like struggle with MS and her like struggle with being disabled and sick all the time. I channeled a lot of that into like MILO's own sort of like persona. So that's probably like the larger exploration of that. And probably more what I'm like borrowing heavily from.
Yeah, I didn't know about that personal element, but now I see why you're doing that. It seems almost like you're like, without any spoilers, of course, it seemed to me that the lesson overall seemed to be that you can't escape decay or entropy at all.
Right.
Like there is no perfect solution. There's no like everything can fall apart. Do you agree with that lesson? Is that maybe you kind of reassuring yourself about this because this obviously wasn't available for your mother?
Yeah, it's definitely, well, it's obviously like me working through my grief a little bit, but it's also kind of like I always wanted there to be a solution for her, or like a more like easier way for her to cope, because I mean MS is just sort of this progressive thing that plateaus for a while and it would get worse. And for her, like I never saw her walking ever like by herself when I was a kid, because she was diagnosed very early. I think I was like maybe 3 at the time. Wow. And then she was like using a cane and a walker by the time I could remember her walking. And then she was like using a wheelchair more in my like early teens. And then it wasn't until like my late teens going to school that she was like more or less permanently confined to a wheelchair and all of that. So I always wanted there to be like, it was always my frustration with like obviously like the healthcare industry and sort of like doctors in general, and like, and the whole superstructure that goes into that, of trying to figure out like, well, why can't there just be something, right? And MS to me always seems like one of those, it's like any chronic or like very, I don't know what the word would be, like autoimmune disease, like those diseases are always to me sort of second tier when it comes to at least concerns when we like look at it in the lens of like the broader picture of like versus cancer, all of that, which I know isn't the best way of putting it as far as because I'm not trying to angle diseases at each other or anything like that. But there is like, as far as like the media is concerned, the media always puts an emphasis on like cancer and, more like, shock value, or not even shock value, but like the prevalent diseases versus like lesser ones. And MS doesn't have that kind of like, uh, for lack of a better word, like sexy element to it when it comes to news stories. So you never really hear about it, or like, I remember growing up, my mom always had an ear out for like the latest, experimental thing or whatever. And it was always like wondering like, all right, when is the FDA going to shoot this down? Right. Like as far as it being approved for like actual public use. So I don't know there, because there's definitely an element of that in Milo as far as like dealing with the health industry at large, and like what doctors do or don't tell you, and the fallout from that, which is me kind of wrestling with it. Yeah, I want to stay away from spoilers myself, but yeah, as far as like I don't know, this overarching theme of the book, to me, it was just like strictly just trying to realize that you're trying to maybe write to myself a little bit. As much as my mom was sick, it was good that I was there, which is why it was so key for Milo to have like a good friend there throughout, and like to make sure that like he's taken care of and supported, and like given some sort of counter element here, because I'm always maybe I'm a little bit, I don't know, with the depth of parent, you're always kind of like too hard on yourself as far as like, was I there enough? Did I say the right thing? There's all that regret. So it's some of that is also like being processed like throughout the book. So
Yeah, I think it's like to me there was a kind of reassuring message. It's a dark message, I suppose, but like a type of acceptance, which is that like you were always going to lose them eventually somehow,
right.
That's something you forget, really, because I think that when you experience loss, you're just like, God, this is so terribly unfair that I'm not getting them back. And it's like, well, that's what happens eventually. It happened to you this date. It was going to happen another date, if not the one that it did happen. But God, it must have been so tough to grow up with your mother like degenerating from since you were so young.
Yeah. Well, it was tough, and I'm the oldest in my family, so it was just sort of like you just had to do what you had to, and my dad was like around, but he was working because he's like supporting all of us since my mom couldn't work. So it was, yeah. I mean, it was tough growing up and dealing with all of that, and so I was like privy to a lot of like that's where all of this like kind of like the like sarcasm, cynicism, and sarcasm kind of comes from my mom's like worst moments, because even though like despite her being that sick, like, and I don't want to paint like a bad picture of her obviously, but like the she still managed to find joy, and I like, and because of the like length of Milo, like, and because of the like sort of angle that I'm approaching this story from, that it's like late in the diagnosis and like late in how he's doing. It's more of it's probably like more towards the end of that cycle of like where he may have started out with some optimism, and that's slowly been like leached away. And that's not something that I noticed with my mom over time to some degree. And she like, I mean, she still did manage to have like bright spots throughout her day, and she knew like, what made her happy, like, and all of that. Like, um, but when you can only do so much when you're dealing with that much, and like, and you have to obviously like give them room to feel those feelings, and give them room to have their like space, really, is what it boils down to. And that's kind of like what I was trying to do with my, like, because there's I think that there's a tendency to sort of like make martyrs of people who are like chronically sick and stuff like that, and like, and not to say that we like don't, and we should like appreciate those people, like, that they are dealing with this and they're like doing so well. Um, but like just trying to accept that like realness element there that's there, and the realness that, like, my mom couldn't always be happy with people. Like, there, her friends would come by, and there was always those elements of like her friends would get like annoyed or mad or frustrated because my mom just wasn't happy or something like that, or like she wasn't like, because she was kind of prickly, but
Mm.
like she was she was in pain, like, so just trying to like recognize that reality. And that's kind of like what Milo is like, at least what I'm attempting to do with Milo, is to kind of just recognize the reality that, like, look, like, he's just trying to get through and trying to live, um whatever way he needs to. So
Yeah.
um
Well, to be human is to be imperfect, and that gets carried over since there's something, essentially human about him throughout.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
some people say that's what makes us lovable, right? Is the fact that we're imperfect, that
Right.
without a need for one another, that we then where does love come into it? Do you agree with that? That there's
Yeah.
lovability and imperfectness, they're
Oh
hand in hand.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's I mean, I think that yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because I mean, I think when the idea that people can be perfect, I think, is like obviously a little bit of a, I don't know, a misimage of what humanity is, right? Because everyone fails, like everyone has those weak moments. And I don't think it's something to like despair in. Obviously, I think it's, what we expect perfection from is like from machines, right? Because but machines only have like typically like one or two jobs, right? And if they don't do that job correctly, then we're like, okay, you don't work. And I think that's also, maybe that's like a byproduct of like, um, our very like consumer society, with like how we tend to like treat people, is like, well, we demand perfection from you all the time, but that's not how people are. Like, people aren't machines where they can just perform a job every day or something like that. So, um, and I think that that definitely like plays into, um, just our culture, obviously, like without going too macro with that. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There are. Do you feel like there's some ethical questions touched upon in the story as well? Tell me about your thoughts on
Oh,
those.
yeah, yeah. So, I it's kind of funny because so I'll just out myself. So I'm a Catholic. So like this idea with the fiction, and I've been like trying to actually like think about this more and more as I've been writing genre fiction, is like, how do I play some of my like values into fiction? And really, for Milo, like, there's like a couple different like ethical questions that are coming up for Milo, right? Because there's like this idea of like a dignity in suffering, um, which, there's lots of back and forth on that, because like, from a secular standpoint, like, suffering isn't good, obviously. Like, we should always alleviate suffering, and like, we should always take care of it, right?
Mhm.
The Catholic standpoint is that, like, so if you, hold to the Catholic faith and you believe in God and believe in Jesus, there's like this idea that like suffering is redemptive because like Christ suffered when he was crucified. Not to inject too much into there, but like, but because like Milo isn't, like, obviously I didn't make him religious or anything. He's like looking for a way to alleviate it. So like the ethical question here for me is like, well, does he just, get a new body? Like, and for me, like being the science fiction writer, is like, well, yeah, let's give him a new body and see what happens there.
Mhm.
And like, and the idea, I think, I guess, one of the ethical questions, I think what you might be like hinting to, I guess, here is like, would it be ethical to just like get rid of your old body, transfer into a new one, and that becomes you? Um, and I'm not really sure. I'm not like, I mean, I have a philosophy degree, but like, I haven't thought long and hard about that, because it's a question of, I mean, I don't know, of what makes us human. And the Catholic part of me is like, that wouldn't be kosher, because we're our minds and our bodies are one. There isn't a separation between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of like getting rid of your body is an issue as far as like it would be like technically immoral from Catholic standards, but exploring it from Milo's take to me was just sort of like, well, what does, is this new body a true solution to what Milo's trying to get away from, as
Mhm.
far as like getting away from the suffering and his like, impending death, basically, or like his much sooner death versus what. And I know this is something that a common request I've gotten from readers of Milo is that they want more, or they want like an expanded edition or something to explore that question a little bit more, because I don't necessarily like do all of the world building in Milo to sort of like be like, well, like what's going to happen as far as like what's the longevity question, what's the end goal of like of all of this, like how is he going to function in society as a robot, like some of that I don't get into because I'm just strictly just trying to explore like his experience in a new body and what does that do.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think to me that's probably like the principal question for me, at least, without getting into like spoiler territory. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a question of like what would you do in that situation, I guess. And I feel like most of us might take the machine body question, like we might take it because
Mhm.
like that's just, I feel like humans we don't like to suffer, right? And if there's an idea to get away from it, right, that would be possible. I always hoped that there would be some sort of like um exoskeleton for my mom down the road or something like that, so that she could like move around. um so I don't know. Was that the ethical question you were thinking of, Leo? Like,
Yeah, I know exactly. No, I
yeah,
mean, I wanted you to discuss
yeah,
it because I know also that you are Catholic. I've seen you posting about it and so on.
hmm
Um,
yeah,
so I wanted you to explain it from your perspective. So it sounds like if
yeah.
you had this chance, you would say no on the grounds of your faith.
I mean, probably. I mean, it's a kind of like, it's one of those questions. I don't, because we don't have because as far as the faith goes, like we aren't really like extending your life beyond what it's supposed to. Like the idea of like, say, like mind uploading or something like that's been like a big thing. I feel like in pop culture lately too has been like whether it's like Westworld, or I think that what was it, the like Upload show or something on Hulu that like was around for a little bit. Um, like the idea of uploading your mind, it's just like it's just the divorced reality of like taking your mind away from your body, because your body is you as much as your mind is, like rather
Mhm.
than that, like kind of rather than the Cartesian kind of dualism of like mind versus body.
Yeah.
So the because like it all links back to like theology, which I'm not a theologian in any sense, but it all links back to like the fact that like when we're all resurrected again, we'll have like our like glorified bodies. So it's not like, so even when we die, those bodies are still going to come back eventually. um so so it's not, I don't know, I feel like there's I don't know, there's a tendency to like, at least from maybe mainstream culture, to view Catholicism as a very like more like spiritual thing, or like it's much more, but like it's very bodily. It's like very, in some ways, like kind of gross with like how bodily Catholicism is, especially when you deal with like some of the saint stories and like um, and some of that. But for me, like fiction, like as a Catholic, like fiction for me is just like this playground to play around with some of these like ethical dilemmas, because like while it might not be, my characters might not be like following my Catholic theology, I like to think that I'm bringing that lens into the story so that
Mhm.
I can sort of like, okay, let's like explore this from this viewpoint and take it to the, you know, take it to the end or whatever,
Got it.
and see what happens, right? Because for me, it's not really a question of like, I never wanted to write. I've always gone back and forth on whether I wanted to write Catholic fiction, like exclusively, or like stuff that like really embodies like all those values, where it would be considered like more like orthodox, where it's like true to the faith and all of that, and how much I wanted to like dabble in that. But it's a mixture of things. It's like I can still kind of have a foot in both worlds on that front,
Yeah.
because I do want to be able to like play with characters in a different way, and I don't want all my characters to end up being. I mean, I haven't written a like I don't know, a real world narrative where it's like taking place in our contemporary culture at all, but um, I haven't wanted to play with like exclusively Catholic characters, at least not yet, because I don't know, it's a little bit more fun to play with gray characters because you get that easy conflict from them. So
well, I think that like I think you've done a great compromise with this story, because it's like, from what I hear from you, it's like these are questions like of interest to Catholicism. I'm going to explore them in a story because like those are important to me, and I want to get a wider audience asking them, without necessarily saying like, well, I'm going to shut this story down because Catholics would say no, so we're not going here. You've not done that, which is good. So I mean, I want more of this. I think you can keep doing more of that. Personally, what was I going to say? I feel like as a writer, like I've heard this reported that like other writers are not really very connected to their bodies. Like I would easily take this robot thing if it was available. Like maybe I would, maybe I'm not. I really don't care that much about my body personally.
Right.
So as a writer, I'm just up in my head all the time. So this just takes me to the shops to get food to keep me alive.
Right, and I'm honestly the same way to some degree. My wife has been on me about running more and whatnot, because I sit too much as it is, just like for my day job and everything else. And I'm realizing that now, especially with like my birthday's next month, so it's kind of like it's like, oh, I'm feeling it now. And and yeah, I mean, I'm definitely the same way. Like, I mean, I smoke, socially smoke, like I drink probably a little bit too much, but like it's things that we want to, but you want to like enjoy life, right? Like you want to like be able to like enjoy bodily pleasures, which is like something that I've always kind of loved about Catholicism too, because they've always been, we've always been that way. Like that's just how the faith has, been. Was it Pope Francis was recently quoted recently that like he was like, sex and eating are like divine gifts from God. Like which is perfect. I was like, thank you for reaffirming this for everyone. But yeah, I mean, I think I think for writers, like I think for us, like we do tend to like be really up here, and I think that's something to play around with for sure.
Just looking at my questions. This book has a really lovely design. Can you tell me about like the publisher and how this came about?
Yeah, so it was actually the whole story behind. So MILO I wrote, and probably I'd heard about this from Radix Media is the publisher, and they are so they're a publisher and also a printing press in Brooklyn, New York City. And so they had put out a call that they were doing the Future series, which MILO is a part of, and they were like looking for, like stories that are, looking for like either near or far future as far as dealing with contemporary issues, social issues, that sort of thing. And I think they announced it in like July, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly. They announced it at some point, and I of course put it off, and then wrote the story in like 3 weeks, very quickly, and then sent it in, and then didn't hear back for a while until they were starting to go through submissions and everything. And they're great. They take because they're also a printing press on top of being a publisher. They were a printing press, or they've been in Brooklyn for I think the past 10 years, and they've always been about design. Like they take a lot of pride in what they produce, and so they always make sure that their stuff looks good. And Lance and Sarah and Nick, um, who I worked with primarily with this, um, they're a great crew. They're awesome. It was my actual, like you said earlier, like my kind of debut publication, and I had a great experience with them as far as being like, they're obviously like an indie press, um, but the communication was great through them as far as like, figuring out edits, which we did like have quite a few sessions of going back and forth about like what was going to work for MILO, especially with the like binary element to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the artist, they was it's Nico Rocks, I believe is his last name. He's a Colombian-based artist who does a lot of like some really cool like video stuff. I don't even know what to call it. Sorry, Nico. And but they knew exactly who to like bring into for this project, and I think he did like a really wonderful job with the like illustrations and the cover design. Um, they all did really, really well. So it was really cool to see that, especially over, I think they started working on it in like August and September, leading right through October. And it was really cool to sort of like see that whole process happen.
Yeah. No, the art is cool, and the way the glitches work as well. I felt like I could hear them while I was reading them.
Right. Yeah. And that, I believe it was maybe Lance who chose the font like to break out the binary a bit too, which was like I think a wonderful choice. And yeah, no, it was, I don't know, it was definitely really, really gave me a rush to see that when it was in its like final product. Even when he sent me like the final like proof just electronically, it was very cool to see. So, but yeah, no, but yeah, Radix Media, they're great over there. So they're doing a lot of cool stuff now, even as far as like even amongst COVID, I think they just produced a prose poem, but in a similar like chapbook format called "We Are All Things," um, by Ganser, I think is his name. So yeah, no, it's cool. I think the Future series was only like maybe their second publishing endeavor, because they had published a collection of like short essays or like short like poems and essays and other things. The theme was grief, but they had published that the year before. So because I think they just started the publishing endeavor like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So yeah.
Cool. And what is next for you? What are you working on? Do you have any more publications coming?
So I don't have any more publications coming, sadly, at least right now. The
Oh, me neither.
did...
I've got an inbox full of rejections. Oh my god. And they seem to be getting more brutal over the years. I thought it was getting better. God, I'm just making people angrier. I should just quit, I think.
I know. There's
like, I ruined your day. I'm sorry. Jesus. Should have read that.
Yeah. I've been working. I did submit a couple things. I have this one this one fantasy story that I really believe in, but it's written in second person, which is always a hard sell for
some people love it, some people hate it. I don't know.
Yeah. So I've been coming up dry with that, but I'm planning on reworking it. Maybe not reworking the POV, but I do need to give it another like facelift before I send it out. Because I did NaNoWriMo in November of last year, and that kind of like killed me. So I like made the mistake of having like a day job, a freelance gig, doing NaNoWriMo while I also have like 2 toddlers. So, which, typical case of taking too much on and whatever. I did write like a 50,000 plus like manuscript, not completed, but like a weird kind of like literary science fiction maybe some like weird fiction in there too. Um, so we'll see. It's still pretty. I haven't worked with it at all, so it's pretty raw. As far as what I'm trying to work on, I don't really have a current project at the moment, just because I've been working through my freelance gig has been taking up a lot of my time.
Mhm.
So and we have personally, well, my wife and I just have a lot of stuff going on as well, as far as just jobs and kids and everything else. So
Yeah.
I'm crossing my fingers, because I would love to get back into um, writing, obviously, but I'm hoping that maybe the spring I'll be getting more into it, or back on the horse,
Mm.
because I do have, aside from the manuscript from NaNoWriMo, I have um, my MFA thesis. I'm planning on reworking that into like still keeping a lot of the elements, but reworking it into being a more like formalized, like and publishable, like science fiction, like probably like space opera ish, cyberpunk ish kind of story. Um, so we'll see where that goes. But yeah, so more like longer projects is basically what I'm looking at. I've been kind of like dancing around doing some like shorter, like either horror fiction or weird fiction stuff, but otherwise the only writing I've been doing has just been doing like book reviews and um, stuff like that. So,
You read anything good recently?
mm, let me think. I did read. Um, so I've been trying to widen my like genre taste. So I think the best book that I've read all year was actually a nonfiction book, which was a little bit older book called The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan, which he examines like the food industry and how we feed ourselves, and um, he looked at like industrial food and big organic and small organic, and then and then for kicks and giggles he looked at like what gathering and hunting would look like, and it was probably like one of the best, yeah, definitely like probably the best book that I've read all year, um, as far as like nonfiction goes. um, I read N.K. Jemison's City We Became, which was excellent. Um, Huge fan of Jemison's. Ever since I read the Broken Earth series, like I've been on her bandwagon. So that was an excellent read. I do have some to be reads that I've currently calling my name, as far as like Mexican Gothic, John Langan's Children of the Fang. Um, those both are mocking me from the shelf as we speak. Um, I'm trying to think, as far as I haven't read. I would love to pitch a science fiction, but I can't remember off the top of my head if I've read any good science fiction this year. I've been kind of branching out as far
Well,
as what I'm reading.
I can recommend The Three Body Problem. Must have heard
Mm.
of that one. Yeah, I
Oh
love
yeah,
Cixin Liu, I think is how you say it. I love
yeah,
his fiction. Like it's so imaginative. It's really easy to read, but it's
mm,
like the ideas are absolutely wild. Um,
yeah.
and I'm into the second book, and he's piling ideas onto the ideas of the first book. I'm like, and then there's a third one that's even longer. I'm like, how are you doing this? It's just insane. I was kind of reading it like going, will I be able to write this good one day? Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. But I'm enjoying it.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't stop yourself reading like that when you're a writer, can you? You can no longer just go, I enjoyed that book. It's always just like, what would I have done? How can I use this?
yeah,
Can't switch it off
yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Yeah, when you're a writer, it does kind of ruin books for you a little
Which are
bit.
your favorite thing? It's the reason you started
Yeah,
writing. Ugh, nightmare.
I know. I know. I think I am gonna go back and read Dune before the movie, or try to.
Yes, I was
So
thinking of that too. Yeah.
yeah,
Did you
'cause
grow up with that one?
no, that one I came to very late. I read it. Probably like in high school at some point, and then reread it at some point in undergrad.
Mm.
Um, But I read the whole series when I was in high school for the most part. Like read all the kind of like the stuff that his son had written a little bit as far as like the house books. And then did read his like 2 follow-ups, which I think I have to reread again to like really like or read in line with all the rest to to see if they actually land or not. For me, I know that there's like so much controversy concerning like what Brian did and all of those. So I don't know. They're definitely something to explore. I don't know. Actually, the thing that I've really gotten into lately have been like graphic, like comics, essentially, like graphic novels for the most part. Like I actually just burned through all the like Wicked and Divine volumes, which was amazing. Even it, despite being very like kind of everywhere, like it was just the way it ends was just so good. So now I'm kind of like on the hunt for like my next series because that's kind of how I work.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, those are just a nice break from like looking at pages of words. So I don't know. I'm a huge Vandermeer fan too, so I have like Vandermeer's like latest, and he's gonna like break my bank because he has the Ambergris like being re-released at the end of the year. So I'm hoping my bookshelf can take it. So
Nice. So what is there anything we didn't talk about? Anything we need to cover?
I'm trying to think. I don't believe so. If anyone, I guess, I don't know. If anyone needs to reach me, I mean, they can find me on Twitter or find my website. But especially if they need something asked of MILO that it didn't air here. So, but yeah, no, yeah, sure. I appreciate you having me on though, Leo. This has been great.
Yeah, of course. So once again, MILO is out now through Radix Media. Hope you check it out. It's a great story, a very cool book. If you want to be on the show, or if you want to tell me something about the show, whatever it is, you can always do so using losingtheplotpodcast-at-gmail-dot-com. I look forward to hearing from you. But that's all for this episode, so until next time, bye-bye.